I didn't go back to work. I couldn't. The idea of sitting at my desk, typing up marketing copy for a pet food brand while my financial identity burned to ash, felt impossible. Instead, I drove to my father's house. I needed it to be a mistake. I needed my dad, the man who taught me to ride a bike and balance a checkbook, to tell me that there was a logical explanation. I needed him to be the parent. He was in the kitchen, making a sandwich. Frank Carter was a creature of habit. Ham and cheese on rye, heavy on the mustard, every day at noon. The domesticity of it made me want to scream. "Elena," he asked, pausing with the knife in midair. "You're early. Is everything okay?" I didn't answer. I couldn't find the breath. I just walked over to the kitchen table and slammed the credit report down on top of his placemat. "Read the address, Dad." I choked out. "Just read the billing address." He wiped his hands on a towel, frowning. He put on his reading glasses, the cheap drugstore kind that always sat crooked on his nose. He squinted at the paper. "Oakwood Lane," he read slowly. He looked up, confused. "That's Patty's new rental property. Why is your name on her mail?" "It's not mail, Dad. It's debt. $52,000 of debt. Credit cards. Loans. All in my name, all sent to her house." He blinked. That doesn't make sense. Patty has money. She's doing well. Maybe she just put you down as a reference and the bank got confused." "Banks don't get confused about 50 grand, Dad. She used my social security number. She stole my identity." "Now, hold on," he said, his voice dropping to that soothing peacemaker tone I hated. "Stole is a very harsh word. Let's not jump to conclusions. Let me call her." He picked up the phone. I stood there, vibrating with rage, watching him dial. He put it on speaker. "Frankie." Patty's voice boomed through the kitchen, loud and cheerful. "To what do I owe the pleasure? I'm just heading to a showing." "Patty," my dad said, glancing nervously at me. "Elena is here. She's upset. Something about a credit report and the Oakwood address." There was a pause on the line. A long, heavy silence that confirmed everything. "Oh," Patty said. Her tone shifted instantly. It wasn't apologetic. It was annoyed. "She found out? I meant to tell her over dinner next week." "Tell me what?" I shouted at the phone. "That you ruined my credit? I was at the bank, Patty. My mortgage was denied." "Elena, calm down," she snapped. "Stop being dramatic. I didn't ruin anything. I simply leveraged your credit profile temporarily. My debt-to-income ratio was a little high because of the flip on Fifth Avenue, and I needed quick liquidity for the Oakwood renovations. It's business strategy." "It's fraud," I yelled. "You forged my signature." "I signed on your behalf as your family," she corrected, as if she were explaining a math problem to a toddler. "And I've been making the payments. Mostly. I felt faint. You've missed 2 months. My score dropped 240 points. Mr. Henderson laughed me out of his office. Cash flow is tight right now, honey. The market is soft. But once I sell the Oakwood place in the spring, I'll pay off the cards and give you a nice little commission for your trouble. $5,000. How's that?" I looked at my father. I waited for him to yell. I waited for him to tell his sister that she had committed a felony against his daughter. Instead, Frank sighed. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Patty, you really should have asked her first," he said weakly. I know," she said, dismissive. "But Elena is so risk-averse. She would have said no, and I would have lost the deal. This is for the family, Frank. When I win, we all win. Elena needs to see the big picture." The big picture is that I can't buy my home, I said, my voice shaking. I'm going to the police. No. My dad and Patty shouted it at the same time. Elena, be reasonable, my dad said, stepping between me and the phone. You can't call the police on your aunt. Think about what that would do. She'd lose her license. She could go to jail. She belongs in jail. She made a mistake, my dad pleaded. She's under pressure. She said she'd pay it back in the spring. That's only 6 months away. You can wait 6 months for your condo, can't you? For the sake of the family. I stared at him. The man who taught me right from wrong was asking me to carry a $50,000 anchor so his sister didn't have to face the consequences of her own greed. You want me to wait? I asked quietly. You want me to accept this? I want us to handle this internally, Dad said. If you report this, you destroy her. Is a condo worth destroying your family? It's not just a condo, Dad. It's my life. She's my sister, Elena. Please. That night changed everything. I looked at my father, really looked at him, and realized he didn't see me. He saw a resource. He saw a buffer to keep his sister safe. Fine, I lied. I won't call the police today. Good, Patty chirped from the speaker. I knew you were a smart girl. We'll fix this, sweetie. You'll see. I walked out of the kitchen without another word. I got into my car and sat there for a long time, watching the curtains in the kitchen window. I wasn't going to wait until spring. I wasn't going to wait another hour. I pulled out my phone. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I called the one person Patty was terrified of. Hello. The voice on the other end was groggy. Jason, I said to my cousin. We need to talk about your mom. My name is Elena Carter, I'm 28, and this is the story of how the person I admired most stole my future to pay for her past. For 3 years, the number 780 wasn't just a credit score to me. It was a shield. It was proof that I was responsible, that I was an adult, and that I was finally ready to build something of my own. I wasn't just saving money, I was curating a future. Every Friday, I moved exactly 20% of my paycheck into a high-yield savings account labeled the Loft. I didn't buy coffee out. I meal prepped chicken and rice until the smell made me nauseous. I drove a Honda Civic with a dented bumper because a car payment wasn't part of the plan. My plan was simple: get the score up, save the down payment, and buy the corner unit at the complex on 4th Street before my 29th birthday. It was the only thing I talked about. It was the only thing that mattered. If you enjoy real-life stories like mine, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. My family, specifically my father, Frank, thought I was being too intense. To him, money was something you worried about later, usually after you'd spent it. He was a retired teacher, kind-hearted but terrible with confrontation, and he lived his life in the shadow of his younger sister, my Aunt Patty. Patty Reynolds was the family legend. At 54, she marketed herself as a real estate mogul. She wore blazers with shoulder pads that seemed to take up half the room and drove a white Mercedes that always smelled like vanilla and expensive leather. She was loud, successful, and constantly telling me that I needed to dream bigger. Elena, honey, she'd say at Sunday dinner, waving a manicured hand. Stop pinching pennies. You have to spend money to make money. Look at me. I just closed on the Oakwood property. Leverage. Sweetie. It's all about leverage. I would just nod, biting my tongue. I didn't want leverage. I wanted ownership. I wanted to know that when I turned the key in my door, nobody could take it away from me. I didn't know it then, but Aunt Patty loved leverage too. She just preferred using other people's collateral. The day everything fell apart started with sunshine. It was a Tuesday in October, the kind of crisp autumn morning that makes you feel invincible. I had an appointment at First National Bank with a mortgage officer named Mr. Henderson. I walked in wearing my best blazer, a folder tucked under my arm containing 3 years of tax returns, pay stubs, and proof of my pristine 780 credit score. I sat in the plush chair across from Mr. Henderson, my heart hammering a happy rhythm against my ribs. "Everything looks good on paper, Elena," he said, smiling as he typed into his computer. "You have a solid income, great tenure at your marketing firm. We just need to pull the final credit report to lock in the interest rate." "Go ahead," I said, confident. "I checked it last week. It's solid." He hit enter. The hum of the computer fan seemed to fill the room. I watched his face. I expected the smile to widen. I expected a handshake. Instead, his eyebrows drew together. He squinted at the screen, then typed something else, harder this time. The silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable. "Is the system down?" I joked, though my hands started to sweat. Mr. Henderson turned the monitor away from me. "Miss Carter, are you aware of the outstanding balances on your secondary accounts?" I frowned. "I don't have secondary accounts. I have one Visa card, paid off every month." "I'm seeing 3 other cards," he said, his voice dropping to that professional, detached tone that signals bad news. "And a personal loan. All opened in the last 14 months. The utilization is at 90%. You have missed payments on 2 of them as of last month." The room spun. "That's impossible. There must be a mistake. A mixed file. My name is common." "The Social Security number matches," he said gently. "The total outstanding debt is $52,000. $52,000. I felt like I'd been punched in the throat. "I don't have $50,000 of debt. I have savings. I have a plan." "I can't approve the mortgage, Elena," he said, sliding a printed sheet across the desk. "Your score isn't 780. With the delinquencies, it's dropped to 540. You're considered high risk." I stared at the paper. The numbers blurred. My vision swam. High risk. Me. The girl who saved receipts for gum. "This is fraud," I whispered. "Someone stole my identity." "You should report it immediately," he advised, standing up to usher me out. The meeting was over. My dream was over. I walked out to my car, my legs feeling like lead. I sat in the driver's seat of my dented Honda and hyperventilated. Who? How? I was so careful. I shredded my mail. I used two-factor authentication. I looked at the credit report again, my hands shaking so hard the paper rattled. I scanned the list of open accounts. Platinum Visa. Chase Sapphire. A generic personal loan from a fintech company. Then my eyes caught the billing address for the accounts. It wasn't my apartment. It wasn't a P.O. box. It was 442, Oakwood Lane. My stomach dropped through the floor. The world tilted on its axis. 442, Oakwood Lane. That wasn't a stranger's house. That was Aunt Patty's newest investment property. The one she bragged about at dinner. The one she said she bought with leverage. I sat there, the engine cold, staring at the address until the tears finally came. It wasn't a stranger. It was family. And she hadn't just stolen my money, she had stolen my name. Jason met me at a diner halfway between his apartment and the city. It was one of those places with sticky laminate tables and coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, but it was quiet. He looked tired. At 25, Jason was still riding the wave of what he thought was his mother's empire. He wore a designer watch and drove a leased BMW, artifacts of a life he hadn't earned but certainly enjoyed. He slid into the booth opposite me, smiling that easy, oblivious smile that only the protected can afford. "Hey, cuz," he said, signaling the waitress. "What's the emergency?" Mom said you were freaking out about some paperwork mix-up. Paperwork mix-up, I repeated, the words tasting like ash. Is that what she told you? Yeah. She said you guys were structuring a loan together and you got cold feet. Classic Elena, right? Always overthinking. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I simply reached into my bag and pulled out the credit report, the delinquency notices, and the printout of the loan documents. I slid them across the sticky table, right next to his elbow. Read the dates, Jason. Read the signatures. He frowned, picking up the top sheet. What is this? That is a $50,000 personal loan taken out in my name. The signature is a forgery. The funds were deposited into Reynolds Realty LLC. He stopped. His eyes scanned the page, darting back and forth. Okay, so she pays it back. That's how she works. She moves money around. She's missed payments, I said, my voice low and steady. My credit is destroyed. I can't buy my condo. And when I confronted her, she told me I had to wait 6 months because she's liquidating the Oakwood property. Jason went still. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking very young and very scared. He put the paper down slowly. Elena, he whispered. She can't sell Oakwood. My stomach tightened. Why not? Because she doesn't own it anymore. The diner sounds, the clinking of silverware, the low hum of conversation, seemed to vanish. What do you mean she doesn't own it? She leveraged it 3 months ago, Jason admitted, looking down at his hands. She took out a hard money loan against the deed to pay off the investors from the Fifth Avenue flip. If she sells it, the money goes to them, not you. There is no equity left. I sat back against the vinyl booth, the breath knocked out of me. My father's voice echoed in my head. She has a plan. Just wait until spring. There was no plan. There was only a Ponzi scheme built on family loyalty. Does my dad know? I asked. Jason hesitated, then nodded. Uncle Frank co-signed the hard money loan. That was the moment the floor finally fell out. It wasn't just Patty. My father, the man who preached integrity, the man who told me to keep the peace, had actively helped her dig this hole. He knew she was drowning, and instead of stopping her, he threw me into the water to keep her afloat. I need to go, I said, standing up. Elena, wait. Jason grabbed my wrist. If you report this, it all collapses. Everything. The investors, the loans, the house. She'll lose everything. She already lost it, Jason. She's just pretending she hasn't. I pulled my arm free and walked out. I didn't go home. I drove straight to the county clerk's office. If I was going to war, I needed ammunition. I spent 3 hours pulling public records on Reynolds Realty. It was worse than Jason said. There were liens. There were lawsuits from contractors who hadn't been paid. And there, buried in the filings, was a copy of a notary log. My name appeared on 4 distinct documents. Power of attorney. Loan application. Guarantor agreement. The notary stamp belonged to a woman named Sarah Jenkins. I didn't know a Sarah Jenkins, but I knew who did. Sarah was Aunt Patty's assistant. I took photos of everything. My hands weren't shaking anymore. A cold, hard clarity had taken over. This wasn't a mistake. This was a systematic dismantling of my life to fuel her ego. I got back in my car and called my father. Elena, he answered on the first ring, sounding relieved. I'm glad you called. Patty is really upset. She's willing to sign a promissory note if that makes you feel better. Dad, I cut him off. I know about the hard money loan on Oakwood. I know you co-signed it. Silence. Heavy, guilty silence. I did it to help her, he said finally, his voice cracking. She was in trouble, Elena. She's my little sister. And I'm your daughter, I said. You knew she was insolvent. You knew she had no money. And when she stole mine, you told me to wait for a payday that you knew was never coming. It's not like that. It is exactly like that. You chose her. You chose to protect her lies over my future. Elena, please. Don't do anything rash. We can fix this. I am fixing it, I said. I'm going to the police station now. If you do that, his voice turned hard, desperate, you are tearing this family apart. You will never be welcome at Sunday dinner again. Do you hear me? You are choosing money over blood. No, Dad, I said, tears finally spilling over, hot and angry. You did that. You traded my credit score for her approval. I'm just getting the receipt. I hung up and blocked his number. Then I blocked Patty's. I sat in the parking lot of the police precinct. The building was gray and imposing. I watched people walk in and out, officers, civilians, victims. I was scared. I was terrified of the fallout. I knew that walking through those doors meant nuking the only support system I had ever known. But then I thought about the condo. I thought about the nights I stayed in, eating rice and beans. I thought about the 780 score I had polished like a trophy. And then I checked my phone notifications. An alert from my credit monitoring app popped up. New inquiry. Luxury auto leasing. 3:45 p.m. She was buying a car. While I was uncovering her fraud, while her son was begging me for mercy, she was at a dealership trying to lease a new Mercedes in my name. That was the transition point. The sadness evaporated, replaced by pure, undistilled fuel. I got out of the car. I walked up the steps. I pushed open the heavy glass doors and walked up to the desk sergeant. "Can I help you, miss?" he asked. "Yes," I said, my voice ringing clear in the lobby. "I'd like to report a case of identity theft and grand larceny. The perpetrator is my aunt." The interrogation room didn't look like it does in the movies. It wasn't dark or smoky. It was just a small beige office with fluorescent lights that hummed loud enough to give you a headache. Detective Miller was a heavy-set man with kind eyes and a desk buried under paperwork. He didn't treat me like a hysterical niece. He treated me like a victim of a financial crime. He spent 2 hours going through the documents I had organized, the credit reports, the forged loan applications, the notary logs I'd photographed, and the screenshot of the attempted car lease from that afternoon. "This lease inquiry," he said, tapping the screenshot. "This happened today?" 3 hours ago, I confirmed. "She's still using my name." He leaned back, rubbing his chin. "Usually, with family fraud, it's a gray area. She said I could borrow the card, that sort of thing. But this..." He gestured to the notary logs. "Forging a signature on a federal loan application is a felony. Using a notary to validate a fake signature is another felony. And doing it repeatedly, that's a pattern." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now, we pay Patricia Reynolds a visit." I didn't go with them. I couldn't. I went back to my apartment, locked the door, and turned off the lights. I sat on my floor in the dark, hugging my knees, waiting for the explosion. It didn't take long. At 7 p.m., my phone lit up. It was my mother, who had been divorced from my dad for 10 years and usually stayed out of his family drama. "Elena," she said, her voice tight. "Your father just called me. He's at the precinct. They arrested Patty." The air left my lungs. "They arrested her?" "At her office," Mom said. "In front of clients. They took her out in handcuffs, Elena. Your father is mortgaging his house to post her bail." I closed my eyes. "He's doing what?" "He's putting up his house," she repeated. "He says it's a misunderstanding. He's screaming that you've ruined her life. She stole $52,000, Mom. She tried to lease a Mercedes in my name today. She ruined her own life. I know, Mom said softly. I know, honey. I'm just telling you, prepare yourself. The family isn't going to see it that way. She was right. By morning, I was a pariah. My phone was flooded with texts from cousins, aunts, and second cousins I hadn't seen since Christmas. The narrative had already been spun. I was the ungrateful niece. I was the one who overreacted. I was the one who aired dirty laundry. How could you do this to family? She paid for your braces when you were 12. Drop the charges, Elena. You're killing your father. I didn't reply to any of them. I forwarded every single message to Detective Miller. 2 days later, the real dam broke. The police interviewed Sarah Jenkins, Patty's assistant, and the notary on the documents. Sarah was a 22-year-old girl just trying to get her real estate license. When the detectives told her she was looking at jail time for notarizing forged signatures, she didn't just fold, she crumbled. She gave them everything. It wasn't just me. It was clients. It was contractors. Patty had been moving money between escrow accounts for years, using new down payments to pay off old debts. She had forged my signature, yes, but she had also forged my grandmother's signature on a deed transfer 3 years prior. The real estate mogul was a fraud. I sat in the district attorney's office a week later. The ADA, a sharp woman named Ms. Vance, laid it out for me. Sarah Jenkins is testifying, Ms. Vance said. We have the paper trail. We have the IP addresses used to open the credit cards. They trace back to Patty's home Wi-Fi. It's a slam dunk, Elena. But… She paused, looking at me with sympathy. But what? But your father is refusing to cooperate. He's claiming he gave verbal permission for her to use his information, and he's claiming you might have done the same and forgotten. The defense is going to paint you as a confused, jealous niece who agreed to help her aunt and then got cold feet. I didn't agree to anything, I said firmly. I believe you. The evidence supports you. But a trial will be brutal. Your father will testify for the defense. He will take the stand and call you a liar to save his sister. I felt a coldness settle in my chest, a heavy, permanent weight. My father. The man who taught me to drive. The man who proofread my college essays. He was willing to perjure himself, to destroy my credibility, just to keep his sister from facing the consequences of her actions. Let him, I said. My voice didn't shake. Let him get up there and say it. Are you sure? I'm sure. The arraignment was the first time I saw them. I sat in the back row of the courtroom. Patty looked smaller without her shoulder pads. She wore a gray sweater and no makeup, playing the role of the frail, misunderstood victim perfectly. My father sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders, glaring at the back of the prosecutor's head. When the judge read the charges, identity theft in the first degree, grand larceny, forgery, falsifying business records, Patty didn't cry. She just looked annoyed, like this was a long line at the DMV. Then, she turned around. She scanned the room until she found me. Her eyes weren't sad. They were cold. She looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and pure, unadulterated hatred. She mouthed one word to me. Ungrateful. I didn't look away. I didn't flinch. I touched the purse sitting on my lap, where my credit denial letter was folded inside my wallet. I'm not ungrateful, I thought. I'm just not your leverage anymore. The gavel banged. Bail is set at $100,000. My father stood up to pay it. And I walked out of the courtroom, knowing that the hardest part, the trial where I would have to destroy my father to save myself, was just beginning. The trial didn't happen like it does on TV. There were no surprise witnesses bursting through the doors, No sobbing confessions from the gallery. It was slow, methodical, and devastatingly quiet. The courtroom felt like a vacuum, sucking the air out of my lungs every time the heavy oak doors opened. For 3 days, I watched Ms. Vance dismantle my aunt's life, piece by piece. The jury saw the bank statements. They saw the IP logs. They heard Sarah Jenkins, the assistant, testify through tears that Patty had forced her to notarize documents without me present, threatening to fire her if she refused. But the silence was loudest when my father took the stand. Frank Carter walked to the witness box looking 10 years older than he had a month ago. His suit hung loosely on his frame. He avoided my eyes, staring fixedly at a spot on the back wall. "Mr. Carter," the defense attorney began, his voice smooth. "Did your daughter, Elena, ever discuss helping her aunt with business finances?" "Yes," my dad said. His voice was a rasp. "She said she wanted to help. She said family helps family." "So, it is your belief that she authorized these accounts?" "Yes." A ripple of murmurs went through the jury. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. He was doing it. He was actually doing it. Then, Ms. Vance stood up. She didn't look angry. She looked sad. "Mr. Carter," she said, holding up a piece of paper. "This is a text message log from your phone, dated October 14th, the day Elena went to the bank. Can you read what you wrote to your sister at 4:30 p.m.? My dad froze. He squinted at the paper. His hands started to shake. "Read it, please," Ms. Vance pressed gently. I wrote, "She found out. She's going to the police. You need to fix this before she ruins us." "If Elena had authorized the accounts, Mr. Carter," Ms. Vance asked, her voice ringing clear in the silence, "why would you say she found out? You can't find out about something you agreed to, can you?" My father didn't answer. He slumped in the chair, the lie crumbling under the weight of his own digital footprint. He looked at Patty, desperate for a lifeline, but she was busy scribbling on a legal pad, ignoring him. That was the moment I saw the truth. He hadn't just sacrificed me for her, he had sacrificed himself. And she didn't care. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Verdict: guilty. All counts: identity theft, grand larceny, forgery. The list went on. Because the amount stolen exceeded $50,000 and involved a pattern scheme, the judge wasn't lenient. "Patricia Reynolds," the judge said, peering over his glasses. "You preyed on the people who trusted you most. You used your family as a piggy bank. I sentence you to 4 to 6 years in state prison." Patty gasped. It was the first real emotion she had shown. She turned to the gallery, her eyes wild, looking for someone to save her. She looked at Jason. He looked down. She looked at my dad. He had his head in his hands. Finally, she looked at me. I didn't smile. I didn't feel a rush of victory. I just felt a heavy, exhausting relief. It was over. The aftermath was a slow-motion car crash. Patty went to prison 2 months later. Reynolds Realty was liquidated. Because my father had co-signed the hard money loans on the Oakwood property and several others, the creditors didn't stop with Patty. They came for him. He lost his retirement savings covering the legal fees and the defaulted loans. He had to sell the house I grew up in, to settle the debts. He moved into a small 1-bedroom apartment across town. He called me once, about a week after the sentencing. "Elena," he said. He sounded small. I wanted to see if you were okay." I stood in the center of my apartment, surrounded by boxes. "I'm okay, Dad. My credit report is clean. The fraud department removed the accounts after the verdict." "That's good," he said. "That's good. Listen, maybe we could get coffee? Explain things." I closed my eyes, remembering the way he looked on the stand. Remembering how he asked me to wait 6 months while his sister leased a Mercedes in my name. I can't, Dad, I said softly. Elena, I'm your father. I made a mistake. You didn't make a mistake, I said. You made a choice. You chose her. And now you have to live with that. I hung up. I haven't spoken to him since. It took 18 months to rebuild fully. I saved every penny again. I worked overtime. I brought my score back up to 780, point by agonizing point. Last week, I finally closed on a condo. It's not the one on 4th Street. That one sold long ago. This one is better. It has a balcony that looks out over the city, and when the sun sets, the light hits the living room floor in a way that makes the whole place glow gold. I sat on that floor the first night, eating takeout pizza, listening to the silence. It wasn't the silence of fear, or the silence of secrets. It was the silence of peace. My cousin Jason texted me yesterday. He's working at a car rental place now, trying to figure out who he is without his mother's money. He said he was sorry. I told him I forgive him. He was a victim of her leverage, too. But forgiveness doesn't mean access. I learned that the hard way. Family is supposed to be the people who catch you when you fall, not the ones who push you off the ledge to see if you bounce. I lost my aunt. I lost my father. I lost the illusion of the perfect, happy family I thought I had. But as I looked around my new home, the one I bought with my own name and my own hard work, I realized what I had gained. I gained my self-respect. I gained my future. And for the first time in my life, I know exactly what I'm worth, and nobody can ever leverage that against me again.